Hi friends, Sarah here from Sunset Bow, and I wanted to do a VR to the Snog, Marry, Avoid tarot tag that was started, I believe it was started by Jacob. It was kind of in response to a discussion that took place in Simon's live yesterday that I understand, I wasn't there for the whole discussion, and I understand it kind of continued into someone else's live. I kind of missed out on a big chunk of that because I was doing a lot of work having to do with my kitchen remodel and new flooring that is happening in my house right now. As you can see, there is a big chunk of a paint sample on the wall behind me, which I know looks great. But anyway, what do you guys think of the color? I kind of like it. I love the purple, but I am kind of tired of it because I've had it for 7 years. And so this, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it's actually very pale, sort of grayish pink. So I'm kind of into it. Anyway, back to tarot. So I decided that I wanted to do a VR to the tag. So basically the idea here is that you do a Snog, Marry, Avoid, which is sort of the UK way of putting it. In the United States, we call this game Fuck, Marry, Kill. The idea is that you pick tarot decks to go in those categories of Snog, Marry, Avoid, and then there are some additional kind of categories that were added in Simon's video. He added a deck that you would divorce, a deck you'd have an illicit affair with, a deck you'd put in the naughty corner, and a deck that's an alternate world that you'd want to exist in, and then also one that's you wouldn't want to exist in. So I thought this sounded like a blast. So I decided to take it on. So the first thing that I want to start off with is talking about the decks that I would snog. And I have to admit that the first deck that immediately came to mind, if only because of the cardstock, not so much the imagery, but the cardstock, is a deck that I just got for myself really recently, and that is the Crystal Unicorn. I'm in love with this deck right now. Again, I don't want to say that I would snog it based on the imagery, because the imagery is kind of inner childy, you know, for me, but it has very, very sexy cardstock. Like, it's so beautiful. It has this kind of like waxy almost feel to it, but it's not shiny at all. The shuffle is unreal. It's so cool. I've just been wanting to have this deck in my hands all the time since I got it a couple weeks ago. And I'm in love with it. But again, it didn't feel like quite the right choice for this category, just because, again, you know, it's kind of inner childy sort of imagery, so it didn't feel quite right. But then I realized that the actual perfect deck for this category is my very beloved Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. I love this deck so much. And it's full of hot mermaids and mermen. And this is actually the 3rd edition, so this is the edition that was before the current edition, which is the gold edition. And I love the cardstock of this deck too. Again, it's just kind of waxy feeling. And it's just, I don't know, this deck is up for a good time. Like, no commitment, just fun. It's got all these like pirates and stuff in it. My favorite card, let me see if I can find her. My favorite sexy card in the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot is the Queen of Wands, and I just want to see if I can find her because she's so awesome. This is going to take me forever. Why did I do this? I should have pulled her out first. Here she is. Check her out. I love her. She's like, you come here now. I love her. Anyway, so I decided that I would snog the Dame Darcy Mermaid Tarot. It just seems like it would, again, be up for a good time. It would have really good breath. You know, I just really love it. So, so that's my snog deck. The next deck is the deck that I would marry. And the deck that I picked for this is my beloved Touchstone Tarot. I love this deck so much. This deck is like my life partner. This is my soul deck. And the reason that I love it so much is you can see that it's all kind of portrait-based artwork, and you can see how these people are just looking right at you in most cases, you know, and they have a very sort of challenging look. You know, they look compassionate, but they also don't look like they're gonna let you off the hook for anything, you know? And for me, I'm kind of an introverted person, and it's very easy for me to kind of shut people out of my life, but it's good for me to have people in my life because I tend to feel accountable to people, and that's, I mean, that's good. That's a good thing. That's a mature thing. And so I feel like I would have a really good, or I do have a really good, mature relationship with this deck where it holds me accountable, but it also is kind and compassionate to me. And that seems like just the perfect kind of relationship to have in a marriage. I don't know why this one's upside down. So yeah, so I absolutely love this deck. This deck is my soul deck. It is wonderful. I love it so much. So anyway, so that's the Touchstone Tarot. That is the deck that I would marry. Again, it's a deck by Cat Black. It is out of print now, but I have multiple backup copies of it because that's how much I love it. Okay, so then there are the decks that you would avoid. So that's the next category. Obviously, I don't have any of my avoid decks because I avoid them. But the first thing that I thought of for an avoid deck is I cannot work with the aesthetic of any of the decks that I saw somebody on Facebook once call the big head, big eyes decks. So that would include decks like the Beautiful Creatures, any Ceccoli decks. I can't work with the aesthetic on those decks, and I don't know what it is, but it's something about the tiny body and the big head and body image issues, and just there's so much that bothers me about it, and it's just not an aesthetic that I can work with, even when I can recognize that the art is very beautiful in a lot of ways. In particular, I love everything about Nicoletta Ceccoli's art except for the big head, big eyes people. But so much of the rest of it is so whimsical and soft and beautiful, and it's just the people that I can't work with. So so that's one of the things that I would avoid. I also, and this is similar to something that Simon said in his video, I avoid the Thoth or Thoth deck. There's something about it that, and it's that deck specifically, it's not decks that follow the system. I have nothing specifically against any aspect of the system. I'm not very familiar with it, but there's nothing that I object to specifically. I can recognize on an objective level that the artwork in it is beautiful, and Lady Frida Harris was an incredible artist. I can recognize, like, I don't have any sort of attachment to the kind of, you know, Crowley was evil demonic person narrative that sometimes goes around. That isn't the kind of thing that I typically subscribe to. I think he was probably kind of an asshole, but A.E. Waite was kind of an asshole too. So, but something about it, just every time I see it, I just get this little, ooh, no, reaction to it. And I don't know why. And I worry that I'm missing out because I know so many people love that deck, but I have to trust my gut on it. I can tell that it's not for me. So, and again, I don't entirely know why, but it's just one that I avoid. I've never purchased myself a copy of it. I've never had any attraction to it. It's just not for me. So, so the next category is deck that you would divorce. And this is another one where I feel like people might think that this is kind of crazy, but I am about to divorce the Druidcraft. And this is a deck, like, I have had some good times with this deck. We have had some good times together. It's a beautiful deck. The artwork is lovely. You can see that I have trimmed and edged it, and I just did that last year because I was sort of like, to keep it in the marriage metaphor, I thought it would spice up our relationship a little bit, but it didn't. I don't know what it is, but it's just a deck that I never reached for. But I think I did a pretty nice job trimming and edging it, and I want somebody to have it who will love it, and so I'm probably going to put this up for trade. It's just our time together has come to an end. So, but I mean, it's a wonderful deck, like beautiful imagery. It's a big favorite for a lot of people. It's just not for me anymore. So, so yeah, I've got it like in the box and everything with the book because I dropped the box on the floor because I'm ready to let it go. So I've got it ready to go up for trade. So that is the Druidcraft. So if the lighting looks a little different right now, it's because I forgot to include my Illicit Affair deck. So I filmed this later and I am inserting it into the right place. So my Illicit Affair deck is the Bohemian Gothic, which the reason I picked it for this category is because I do not have a lot of dark decks. if you've ever watched my deck collection video, you'll notice that I own no vampire tarot decks. I own no zombie tarot decks. It's just not an aesthetic that I usually work with, but I love this deck so much. And I think the reason is that it actually has a really great sense of humor. Like, I actually find this deck really funny. I don't know, just something about it feels warm to me, even though it's dark. But because it's not my normal thing, and I sort of feel like I'm stepping out on my normal deck aesthetic when I use this one, I chose it as my Illicit Affair deck. So, the Bohemian Gothic. Gorgeous. So beautiful. So awesome. Funny. Wonderful. Just great cardstock. Sexy cardstock. Everything about it's great. So, love this one. The next category is a deck that you would put in the naughty corner, and I'm guessing that some people who have watched some of my past videos are going to guess which deck that I'm going to pick for this. And the deck that I picked for this is the Everyday Witch. I got this deck, and I was so excited to get it. And just looking online at the imagery, I was like, this is right up my alley. I'm going to love this. I was so happy that when it arrived that day, I was just like, yes, and I went to open it up and just immediately like felt kind of cold about it. And but I was determined to give it a chance because there are, you know, some people whose opinions I really respect who, you know, would say that this is like their soul deck. You know, so I was sort of like, I think there's something to it, you know. It's not that I hated it. I just didn't immediately connect with it. So I figured I'll hang on to it and I'll see, you know, how I feel about it and kind of keep moving along with it. So a couple months went by, and then in January I was kind of clearing out some decks because I decided, you know, did the whole KonMari thing and, you know, just a January sort of clearing out of decks that I wasn't using. And I got to the Everyday Witch and I was sort of like, ooh, do I keep this? Do I let it go? What do I do? And I decided to let the deck tell me what to do. And so I did a reading with this deck and got the cheekiest, snarkiest, like, response that I've ever gotten, ever. I literally pulled 3 cards and every single card was saying, neener, neener, you can't make a decision about something. And it just made me laugh. Like, I like burst out laughing. And because of that, suddenly I was kind of charmed by it, you know, and I did a whole video about this. I'll link the video. But I just suddenly was like, oh, okay, you know, you're fun. You're kind of snotty to me right now. Like, you're gonna give me some attitude. That's cool. And so I decided to hang on to it. And so I think what I need to do is I need to give myself a chance to sort of work with this on a continuous basis for a period of time and just like maybe force myself to reach for it to see if I can kind of build that connection with it. Because suddenly, after it got a little bit of a tood with me, I didn't want to give it up anymore. It just, I don't know, it made me laugh and it made me kind of delighted, and so it sparked joy. So I didn't Marie Kondo it. And yeah, so I still have it. So again, that's the deck I would put in the naughty corner, and that is the Everyday Witch. So the next category is an alternate world that you would want to exist in. And my choice for this category is the Green Witch Tarot. I love this deck so much. This is my hug deck. This is the one that I get out when I'm having a rough time and I just need a soothing message. Honestly, this deck makes me think of like living in pagan Hobbiton. It's just this sort of bucolic farming community with these like, you know, pagan influences, and just everything about it. It just seems like a fairy tale, and I would love, like, look at this. Look at this sun card. I want to live in that little cottage. Like, that's wonderful. I just, you know, look at, I mean, I love this world. I would 100% want to live in this world. So that's my choice. Honorable mention would go to the Pagan Otherworlds, and I've said this before, and Simon actually said something similar, but with the Pagan Otherworlds, I wouldn't want to live there, but I always think of the Pagan Otherworlds as sort of feeling like it almost feels like a quest in a video game where you're sort of going from character to character and each one has a message for you, and the landscapes are beautiful, and it would be a wonderful, it's a deck that makes you feel like you're traveling alone through a strange land, and I would love to sort of go on that quest through the Pagan Otherworlds. I wouldn't want to live there because most of the characters are a little bit too slightly inhuman feeling to feel like you would have a very comfortable relationship with them, but they all feel like they would have some sort of very, you know, very obscure kind of mystical message for you. And I love that about that deck. It's just, it's such a cool feeling that it gives you when you read with it. So I would like to travel in the Pagan Otherworlds, but I would like to live in the Green Witch. And then the final category for this tag is an alternate world that you wouldn't want to exist in. And this one I would choose, and again, I don't have any decks like this because again, I don't necessarily want to be in that world. I would choose any Wonderland deck, like any deck based on Alice in Wonderland. And now hear me out, because I love the Alice in Wonderland books. I read them for the first time when I was a kid. They're fascinating, you know, they're great adventures. They're such a good read. They're full of like wordplay and wit, and they're amazing. But you have to admit, it's kind of an unsettling world to be in. And it's one of those worlds, you know, at the end of like the Chronicles of Narnia, when they all go back to the real world, you're sad because Narnia is so wonderful. At the end of Alice in Wonderland, when she goes back to the real world, you're relieved because she was in imminent mortal peril right before she went back to the real world. She was either going to get her head cut off or she was going to get eaten at a banquet through the looking glass. Like, it's a very, very unsettling world to be in. And so despite loving those books, I don't have any Wonderland decks because, again, I find it unsettling. And it makes for a wonderful adventure story, but not so much a tarot deck that I would want to work with. So yeah, so that would be my world that I would not want to exist in. I know that Simon in his video pulled some individual cards for the Snog, Marry, Avoid. I got too overwhelmed by the prospect of doing that because I have enough decks that, and nothing immediately came to mind specifically where I was like, oh, that's the one. With maybe the exception again of that Queen of Wands and the Dame Darcy, I might want to snog her. But you know, it just felt like too overwhelming of a prospect to like go through all my decks and try to find those cards. So I didn't do that aspect of it. But anyway, hopefully the rest of this was fun, and this is a really fun tag. It's just enjoyable to bring a little fun and amusement to tarot sometimes. So anyway, so thanks to Jacob for starting this. Thanks to Simon for perpetuating it. Thanks to everybody who participated in the discussion that sort of spurred this on the lives yesterday. And thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.